All right, so I think we got through most of the files work, right, from Zybooks here. We did pretty good. Looked at CSV files, looked at writing files and reading files. So we're going to use that in our final project. So we have the project that was due today, project 3 we're going to talk about, and then we can talk about the final project. We can get started on that over break, or if you just want to take the whole break, go for it. And it's due when you present it. Ideally, we can get it done sooner so you don't have to worry about it during finals week, but it's up to you. So however you want to work on that should be fine here. So let's start with the project. So fire up PyCharm here. We'll look at our classes project. Classes and testing, right? So we're going to write our item class with quantity, name, and unit price. We're going to add in a get total price. Right? Have set and get methods for quantity and unit price, just to get for name. And then our string method that overrides the string behavior. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense yet, but that's okay. So we get a string value with all the details, like here, 7 bananas at 30 cents each, and the total price. And then we're going to have a shopping list cart that has an attribute as a list of items. We're going to have a way to add items to it and a function for receipt that'll just go through every item in our items list, print out the item details, probably with the string method here, and the total price, and then the grand total. Right? And then we're going to have a unit test for that to make sure it does what it's supposed to do. These ones are tricky if receipt prints, so really it's supposed to return this value. So if we wanted to print it, we could print it. If it only prints, there's not really a good way to unit test it. There are ways to do it, but they're really awkward and ugly and awful. So returning the value is the key here. That lets me go and check what did I get back out here. And then the idea with classes, right? We don't want them to be tied to input and output on the console, because then they're more reusable. Yeah.
Within the shopping cart.
Yep. Yeah. A function of shopping cart. Yep. Or a method in shopping cart. Yep. And then once we have all that, then we'll write our little program that lets them add items and get the receipt until they're done. Right? Just to the rest of, let's see if we can go make them use it here. So 4 different parts, right? The item class, the shopping cart class, the unit tests, and then the program. So let's start up a new project. This was project 3. And then if we wanted to put them in separate files, great. If you want to leave them in the same file, that's fine too. I'm fond of having one class per file. I got that habit from Java, which is a rule in Java. I like how it looks in source control as well, because then you can see, hey, the last time this particular class changed. Just a style preference, right? It doesn't really matter if you want to do it one way or the other here, but I'm going to do it for fun, and hopefully it won't be too bad here. So this will be my item class here. This class for item. We'll have our init method here, and it's going to have a self dot, what do we have, name, right? And this didn't really specify, right, if you needed to have arguments for it, but if you don't have a set for name, you have to have it in the init, because that's the only way to give a value for name. If there is no set method for it, no set function for it, there's nowhere to add it. So it has to be in the init. So probably would have name, unit price, and quantity, but at least needs name, right? Well, I need a name argument here. You can say my self name is the name. If you wanted to have quantity and unit price, you could, or you could default them 0 maybe. Unit price is 0. Sure, right? We could have default values for them. We could have not included at all. This is whichever way you wanted to go about it, it's going to be okay here. So self.unit price. Unit price. Oh my goodness, I can't type is the unit price. Self dot quantity is the quantity. Okay. After I've got my init done, now I can go generate the other things I want. Right. I'm going to be lazy. Well, come on. Generate. Oh, I'm going to be in here, right? Generate. What? Is it not doing it for me? It doesn't generate. I'm sorry. I'm confusing what I'm working with. We never had to do it for us, right? Stupid tool. Other tools will generate these things for you. I'm sorry. So anyway, so we'll have a get name, return self.name, right? We'll have a get unit price, return self.unit price. Oh, it's unit price, and a define get quantity, return self.quantity. And then the new one, right, is this get total price. If there's no attribute for total price, this one is computed. So it's going to return our self.quantity times the self.unit price. We'll do the arithmetic, return that value. Because if I change the quantity, it changes my unit price, or my total price. If I change the unit price, it changes the total price. You could have it as an attribute, but then you'd have to change it anytime either of these change too. And it gets a little tricky here. Yeah.
What about the methods for setting rise up?
Yeah, we're going to do sets in just a second. Yep. So then we'll have a set. So set unit price needs a unit price. Now, don't think it was required in here, but probably a good thing to make sure we can't have negative or more than zero, right? So I'm going to say, hey, if my unit price is greater than zero, my self.unit price is equal to the unit price. Otherwise, I'll just take my self.unit price and leave it at zero. Right? Zero maybe is my default. Maybe one's a better default. I don't know. Whatever you want to pick is going to be okay. And giving things away for free is also bad, but it's worse to give away money and give them the product for free. Right? So no negative prices is all. And that was just optional, not required. But it will do the same with set quantity as well. Quantity. So I'm just going to copy this and we'll just change this for quantity. Quantity and quantity. Okay. So that's it for item, right? That is the item class. Oh, and the string method. Sorry, and the string method. So one more string method here. So then we'll add in this string here that returns a string of, so it was going to be a little formatted string, my self.quantity, self.name at self.unitprice, sure, slash each, and then self.totalprice, get total price. Right, we can call our functions in these here as well. Probably a $sign here, right? $sign, because that'll be pretty. $sign for the unit price, right? Sure. Something like that. So we should be able to get whatever it is, item at cost each total here. And that's our string function. So we can test this one. So I'm going to go to test. No, should go to test. It says there are no tests. Let's make new test. We could have separate test files. You could have all one test file. It doesn't matter too much here. So set quantity, set unit price for sure, because I added in code, so I need to make sure they're working here. Get total price will do in our init as well. So we've got these two here, and I'm going to add a test init as well. So we're going to arrange, we're going to act, we're going to assert. So to create an item, then, right, I'm going to have an expected name is bananas, an expected unit price was like, I don't know, 30 cents each, an expected quantity is 7, and then the expected total price is going to be 2.1, right? 7 times 3, right? Or 0.3. And then we'll have an expected string, right? Should be 7 bananas at 0.3 each, right? What did I say? $sign each, 2.1. I didn't do any pretty formatting here. That's okay. Right? If you wanted to add some padding and pretty stuff, you could, but that's okay. So that's what we expect, right? These are all the things we expect. And then for testing, let's make an item. So bananas is an item, and we'll give it the expected name. Oh, sorry, we have to import here. So from item, import item. I think that works, right? Oh, that should be lowercase I item. Shoot. Let me rename that. Lowercase I item. There we go. Item, given the expected name, given the expected quantity, and given the expected unit price. Right? And then we have to get out the actual. I think that was the order, right? Was it quantity and unit price? Quantity and unit price. Okay. And then we'll have an actual name is bananas. Get name, an actual unit price, bananas get unit price, an actual quantity, bananas get quantity, an actual total price, and get total price rate. It's a little bit tedious here, but that's okay. An actual string is a string of bananas, right? And we'll go assert. So self.assert equal, nope, assert equal. We wanted the expected name and the actual name. And we'll just have a bunch of these assert equals here, right? For expected unit price and the actual unit price, the expected quantity, and the actual quantity, for my expected total price, my actual total price, and then the expected string and the actual string. Right? We should be able to run that one. Oh, tested it failed. Where bananas at 30 each does not equal 7 bananas at oh, I didn't have the 0 here. Right, my bad. So on mine, I did not have the 0, right? Because you get the 0 if you don't add any formatting. Right? That's so it's showing this was here. I expected it without the 0. I actually got it with the 0. Right? This is the easier one to look at. I don't know. I was looking at the other one. Let's give that a run. All right, now it passes. So that test passed. Right? We feel pretty good about item so far, right? And we tested all of the gets here, right? What we need to test now is set unit price and set quantity, right? Now, it might make sense here, instead of doing this, to actually use our functions because our functions have a little bit of code here, right? So we can say self.set quantity given the quantity, because that'll keep it from being, if you give me a negative in the init, I wasn't checking it, right? Self.set unit price given the unit price. This is probably a little bit better here, just to make sure that we're setting these properly is all. Um, it doesn't like that I did this outside. That's okay. I'm not too concerned. So sets are running here. Um, so technically these else's are running, right? Because I gave it 0 in terms of code coverage. That's a little bit nitpicky. So I can do them separately here. So this will be set unit price negative, right? So I'm going to make a banana or make an item here, right? I don't really care what it is here. So we're going to arrange, we're going to act, we're going to assert, right? So to test something, I just need an item. I don't care what the name is here. I don't care what the unit price and quantity are, right? Because I'm just going to leave them as the default, right? And I'll have a expected price should be 0, right? That was our default if we give it nothing. So when I act here, I'm going to call my item.set unit price, and I'm going to set it to like -1. And I'll have an actual unit price. Expected unit price. Here's my item.get unit price, right? And then we'll assert the equal. Self.assert equal, my expected and my actual. So if I try and set it to negative, does it give me 0? Right? And then I want to test this where it does work here, right? So another test to get that other line of code running, which technically it did already, but that's okay. I'm not too concerned. So we set it to say like 7. If I set it to 7, does it go to 7? Can I measure these ones here? So we can run our tests. So run tests. Oops, now let's run tests. There we go. So set unit price and set unit price negative work. Set quantity fails because this one just fails, right? So it's basically the same tests here, just for quantity. I'm just going to rename it here, quantity. Set quantity, negative, and set quantity, right? So instead of expected unit price, it's expected quantity. Actual quantity, set quantity, get quantity, quantity. The word quantity has lost all meaning now. I swear. I don't know what it means anymore. Set quantity, expected quantity, get quantity. Maybe is this faster to copy paste? I feel like it's a little bit faster. I don't know. We could have typed it all out, right? So now we're setting quantity to -1. It should stay at 0. When I set quantity to 7, it should go to 7, right? Run our tests. I want to run all tests. There. Nope, nope. Come on. I run all tests. There we go. Run all the tests. And I ran them all. So I think item is done, right? Okay, so shopping cart. So shopping cart, then I'm going to add a new class just for fun, a new file. Not super Python idiomatic, but I like it. So lowercase shopping cart for class shopping cart. So shopping cart needs to use item, right? So we're going to import item or from item, import item, right? And then my shopping cart has a init. What did shopping cart need? Just an attribute for list of items. We have an add item, we have a receipt. Sure. So we have a self.items in the list. We can add an item, give it an item, take our self.items, and we'll append the item, and we'll receive. So we need some sort of string result here. Or if you wanted to get fancy, we could add in like a string join thing. Yeah.
I'm doing that with, at I,
Uh-huh.
uh, parameter self and I, right?
We have self. Yeah. And item.
Source and to the, one item first. Should we first instance the class items?
Well, so the argument item here should be an instance of the item class, is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting whoever uses shopping cart to give me an item instance. They could just give me the word to. I don't know what they're giving me. So later, like next semester, we'll look at how I can check to make sure is this item actually an item, right? That's a little bit beyond what we're going to do right now. We haven't gotten into it yet, but next semester we'll look at how do I know that this item argument is a item, is an instance of the item class. You can check for that. We just don't know how to yet.
Like mine, you use Ireland as a brand. I just, they use Ireland as a item. So of course we render self. Then our instance like item, some parameters for item.
Oh yeah, like the name, quantity, and price. Yeah, that's fine. You could make it into an item yourself in shopping cart. Sure. Yeah, that would work too.
Well, so I would say we introduce, the class item. And then we need, create these species
Yeah,
file.
yeah, you could do that. So like you'd have item name, item price, item quantity, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, you could totally do that and make an item. Either's fine. So I'm going to say I got a result, right? It equals nothing so far. And then I'm going to say for item in self.items, right? I'm going to take my result. I'm going to add to it the string version of that item, right? And I'm also going to add a new line because that way we'll add the new line. So the string join on new line is probably prettier for this, but this will be okay because we also need at the end here, we need to then add in, take our result plus equals the grand total of, okay, well, I need to track that, right? So I need a grand total or total is 0 for every item and item. I'm going to take my total plus equals the item dot get total price. We'll add in here, let's do, sure, we'll do that as a formatted string, total, right? We'll add in the total price. We got it here. And when we're done, we return the result. Oops, 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 return result. Right? So start at blank. For every item, add something in, add in your grand total. We're done. That's all shopping cart is, actually. Uh, Works out pretty well. Do we not need the import? Oh, I guess we don't need the import because I guess we never used item directly, so that's fun. All right, then we'll go to test. Go to test, create new test, test shopping cart. We want to test receipt. So we're going to add item as part of receipt. So I don't need to test that separately here. So we're going to arrange, we're going to act, we're going to assert. So we're going to have an expected receipt is what? I don't know what we have, like 7 bananas at, I should just go copy that out of my item test, right? I have here. Here's my 7 bananas at 210. And then what else do we want in here, right? We wanted, um, this is going to be a little ugly here then. Like I can add in the new lines myself. Yes. We could do that, the triple quote string too, right? I'm not sure which way is going to be easiest here, but we'll take our click receipt plus equals. And then what else? What else do you want to buy? We'll just do 2 items. We bought some bananas. How about peanut butter? 1 peanut butter at, oh, how much does peanut butter cost? Like 2.99 now? At 2.99, 2.99. A new line, and then my expected receipt plus equals grand total. 210, 2.99. Don't judge me. 210 plus 2.99, 509. 509. Right? That's our expected receipt. Right? And then I need to set up the shopping cart. So we got to import shopping cart. So from shopping cart, import shopping cart. And then from item, import item, because I'm going to make the items here. Right? So I'm going to make my shopping cart equals a shopping cart. And then I'm going to have bananas is item given bananas 7 at 0.3. And then my peanut butter is an item that's peanut butter. The quantity was 1 and the unit price was $2.99, right? I'm going to take my cart.addItem. I'm going to add bananas. And my cart.addItem. I'm going to add my peanut butter. Okay, so this is everything I've done to arrange. The code I'm actually testing then was receipt, right? So I'll have my actual receipt is cart.getReceipt, or no, cart.receipt. Probably should have been get receipt, but that's okay. And then we'll assert self dot r equal my expected receipt and my actual receipt. Do you think it's going to work? Oh, it failed. What doesn't match here? Ah, each. I forgot my each. At $2.99 each. My expected receipt, right? We pointed out the difference here. And then grand total was a capital T. There we go. All right, now it passes. All right, second time's the charm. All right, so like in terms of code coverage, we were using add item. There was no way to get the items back out aside from looking at the receipt, right? We never added a remove item or get item or anything. You just kept on dumping stuff into the cart. You can't take stuff out of the cart once you put it in, right? That's okay. This is the way we wrote our code. All right, so that's shopping cart and the tests. That makes sense. So we got through item, shopping cart, unit tests, and then we need a program that actually makes it work. So back in main now, we add our imports. Just go copy from here, right? And then like more items or something. I don't know. We're done. Continue. Or I don't know, more y. And while more equals y, sure. Right. You want to add an item or be all done or get your receipt or something? We can get I guess we should do that as choice, right there. Choice. We can uh, is not q. I don't know, it's something here. While choice does not equal a q. There we go. Choice does not equal a q. We can get an input of their choice is equal. Input of you want to add an item, print receipt, receipt, or Q for quit. Does that make sense as like a menu? Like having these things in parentheses? This is like real old school. Anyway, you want to do your menu, or like 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 probably would have been better, right? Is that better? Well, that's fine. I can make my crazy menu because it's mine. So if choice is equal to A, right? Well, if choice is equal to R, and then really we don't need an else because it'll just quit after. So if it's A, it's add an item. So we'll have to ask them what's the item name. So we'll get item name, an input for the item name. Name. We'll get the quantity equals an int of an input, quantity, and then a unit price is a float of an input for the unit price. Okay, and then I'll make an item, add to my shopping cart. So I need a shopping cart, right? So probably in my outside the loop because I don't want to make a new one every time. So I'll have our cart equals a shopping cart. I can take cart dot add item, and I can add an item of the item name, the quantity, and the unit price. Right? You could make items separately and then add the variable name for it. You could just add it in here. Right? Either way works okay. And if it's a receipt, we're just going to print cart.receipt. That's all it is. Right? Just give it a run. So let's add an item. We'll add bananas. Let's add 7 bananas at 0.3 cents each. Let's add an item. We'll add peanut butter. We want one of those at $2.99. We'll print our receipt. Get our receipt. Let's quit. Right? What do you think? So it took more time to write the tests than it did to write this little while loop here, right? But again, this idea that software is going to live longer than it takes to make, right? We want software to be useful and to be used by an organization. So having the tests will make sure that as we maintain it, we can keep on testing and making sure it does what it's supposed to do here. It's pretty good. All right. Let me go ahead and commit that. So this is project 3. We did. All right. You want to talk about the final project? All right. Final project. Let me go get a classroom link for it.
Oh,
I don't know. Depends how long it takes you to write it.
is it cool?
I like it. It's a game. Do you like games?
Uh,
Okay. Do you ever play this game as a kid? I can't probably can't use the proper name here because I don't want to get sued here. But the goal of the game was to bankrupt your friends and take all their stuff.
cool.
You got to bankrupt your friends, run them out of money, and take all their things. Monopoly. You ever play Monopoly?
Yeah, no way.
Is that weird to teach kids like, hey kids, let's play a game where you steal all your friends' stuff and make them go so far into debt they have to give you their things? No, I love Monopoly. It was one of my favorite games. But I was young. I was the youngest sibling of three, so my older siblings were like bored and tired of it by the time, and I was still like a whiny kid, and I'd be sad when I lost, and they never wanted to play with me. Um, but that's okay. Okay. So we're gonna build a little Monopoly game. It's not very data sciencey, I'm sorry, but what we could do after we get the Monopoly game working is then do some interesting stuff with it and figure out like how many turns does an average Monopoly game take? Because there's not actually a lot of logic and like strategy that goes in Monopoly because we're not going to implement trading. And no one ever trades in Monopoly because unless the trade is good for you, you're not going to do it. And no one is ever going to offer a trade that's good for you because that will make them lose. So like the whole idea of being able to trade in Monopoly is pretty silly. Like sometimes two different people would trade to each get their own Monopoly colors, but objectively someone will lose in that trade. So it was never really in your interest to trade unless you can talk someone into it. Uh, so we're not going to implement trading because that's more complex. We need to. So we're just going to do a basic version of Monopoly here. Um, so let's add. Oh, I think I already had it here, right? Hang on. Let's see. Yeah, I have the final project here. That's right, because I needed to add all this in here. All right. So please URL of your repository. Add screenshots. Running to README. Now, I do have one extra thing here we've not done before. And I'll be honest, this is my best effort in making sure people don't cheat. It's not perfect, but it's my best effort. So I'm going to require must have at least 10 commits over 10 different days of working code. So you can't just go out and ask the chatbot, which isn't even perfect anyway, for a solution, paste it in and turn it in. So what we're going to do is over at least 10 different days, work on the project, get some small piece of it working and commit it. Get some small piece of it working and commit it. Get some small piece of it working and commit it. Right? You can't just ask chatbot for a solution and then like paste in a tenth of it because then the code won't run. I'm just being honest. Like this is my best effort to get people to work on it themselves. You can use chat for help. Go for it. Right? But we're still building it piece by piece by piece. And like honestly, that's what we're going to do in the real world. When you get out in an industry, we have these AI tools. We're going to use them, but you're going to build your software iteratively. We're not just going to go out, ask the chatbot for a solution and copy paste it in. It's not going to work for us, right? That's not even how the tools work. You don't get these full solutions. You get pieces. Our job will be to be the puzzle master and put the pieces together, make them fit right. Right? That's what we're learning how to do. We solve problems. It's just another tool we're going to use. So 10 different commits over 10 days. Without this, you will not get a score. And it turns out if you don't get a score in the final project, you don't pass the class. This is rather deliberate, right? So everything we've done up to this point sort of has built up to the final project. We're using all the tools, techniques, and things we've learned. If you can put them together in the final project, great. I'll be happy. Right? If we can't, then something didn't go right along class here. So we're going to build a very basic version of Monopoly. Okay, so by basic means we're going to cut some of the features out because we don't need to do all the different things here. So no chance or community chest cards. Okay, so that's probably the first one here. So the idea here is we're going to have a when the game starts or when the program starts, ask the user if they want to start a new game or load a game. So we're going to add in a save game feature using files. So it sounds a little complex for a second, but let's break it down. So the board, right, is 40 squares, all the different properties. They're all the same property every time, but sure, we can build it out once, but properties know who owns it, right? That's about all the properties know. So the property, they know what the rent is, they know how much it costs to purchase, they know who owns it, or there's no owner, right? So we have 40 of those. Probably in a list because that makes life easy, right? Sure. And then we have players. So we're going to have for a new game, that's the user, how many players? So 2 to 8 players. I think it's 2 to 8 players can play at a time. We'll have a list of players, right? Players know how much money they have, and players know what square they're on. It's really all we need to know, right, for players. There's not a lot of detail. So in terms of saving a game, we need to save our 40 properties off with who owns it. 40. So we're going to do blank properties. Just if there was a chance or community chest, there's just nothing there, right? So there's 40 squares on the board. So Go is not really a property, but we're just going to mark them all as properties, right? Essentially. So 40 properties, who owns it? And then 2 to 8 players, right? What square they're on, how much money they have. And then the last thing we need to know is whose turn is it? Who's next? Player 2, player 3, player 4, whose turn? That's all the information we need to reload the game. The loop just keeps on going after that, right? We just, okay, now I know who owns what property. I know where the players are. I know whose turn it is. It's the same thing as starting a game over, right? When we start a new game, nobody owns the properties. Everybody's on square zero. It's player one's turn, right? It's the exact same thing. We just have the game in a different state. So it's not too bad here. So like I would leave the save and load feature for later, right? So as we're building things out iteratively, forget that. Just leave it on the back burner. It doesn't have to happen right now. We want the game to work first. Then we can figure out how we save and load after, right? So as we're building out these pieces here. So for players, so players take turns going around the board, spending money um, to land a property that isn't owned. You can buy it if you have enough money. So if you don't have enough money, just there's no auction, just you don't buy it. That's all. How's it going? Oh, no worries. Yep. So if you got enough money, you can buy it. If not, just ignore it here. That's fine. If someone owns it, other than the current player, they pay the rent to the owner. Okay. The player runs out of money, they are out of the game. Don't worry about transferring property or anything over. You can transfer the property if you want. You can just put it back to zero if you want. Either way you want to go about it's fine with me. So when player loses, either set the back to unowned or give it to the player they lost to.
How many spots are supposed to be on the board?
There's 40 spots on a Monopoly
All
board.
of them are wrong, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So really, it's not even two-dimensional. You can just imagine it as a 40 square list, right? And when you get to the end of the list, you just go back to the beginning if you want, right? Because there's just the 40 spaces. Yeah.
Give them the like put in how many squares you have.
No, it's a Monopoly board, so it's always 40.
They'll know.
Oh, you're going to code it in.
Okay.
You'll code in the 40 squares. Yeah.
Like, that's what I wanted to know. If they were just like, no, not.
Yeah. So you have to build the 40 squares.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So the new game will load. Here's the 40 squares, right? Or you'll have those 40 squares listed, right? And then when you load a game, you'll just go set the owners of the 40 spaces, those sort of things. So we're going to include 2 classes, or at least 2 classes, right? So a class for player. So player has a name or a number. Number is probably easier. If you're like me, my name was Eric. I went to school. I never had a class without another Eric. So dealing with player names was obnoxious because then you need full names. And I was Eric C. There was Eric S. There was Eric O. There was Eric P. in my one class. That was awful. Way too many of us. You can do that if you want. If you just want to do numbers, that's fine. And then if you use numbers, it's probably their index in the list of players. Like player 0 is at index 0. Player 1 is at index 1. Player 2 is at index 2. That's super easy. And that's perfectly fine. You don't need names if you don't want to, right? So name and number that has their dollar or their cash, right? And then it has their current space, right? Hey, all players start at space 0 when the game starts, and then you move from space 0 to 39. When you get to space 39, you keep on moving, you just start back at 0 again and keep on going, right? If the board's a circle, what we can imagine is just a single list, right? So we have player, we have property. So property would have a name, probably a name, right, for property. It would have the purchase amount, and it would have the rent amount. We're not going to worry about houses and hotels because that's more complex than we need to get later on. If you wanted to add it to make it more like Monopoly and actually steal their intellectual property, go for it. Um, that's fine. Just don't go sell it. That things will go badly for you if you try and sell their intellectual property. So rent amount and then owner. So again, owner like name or number, right, is probably easiest here. These sort of things. Okay. Uh,
So, the latest class will have the name, number, attached, and current status.
yep.
And what settings in current status?
So like if we imagine we have a list of 40 properties in a list. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm on space 3 or on space 7. I'm sorry?
It's the one that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. The one they're currently on. Yep.
But the property eventually the players flashback.
So you could set the owner to an instance of player. That gets to be really tricky once we start like trying to save this information out places. So just putting like the owner's name or number is probably simpler. It'd be nicer to have the instance of player saved as the owner, but then like it gets a little awkward. So like with our gradebook, right? Gradebook had a list of students and students had a list of things. So you could have a list of properties and each property has an owner, or you can just have their name or number. It'll essentially do the same thing for you. Um, it might be faster if you actually store the player. So depending on how you want to set things up, so like you might have a way to add money to a player or take money away from a player. Right? So like you could have the current player take away the money for rent, given the properties get rent, and then take the property's owner and add money given the rent. So any way you want to chain these things together can work. Yeah. So I don't think this needs to be two-dimensional, right? Because there's no rows and columns. Right? The board is a square in the game, but it's really just if you imagine a list of 40 properties, right? You just go and when you hit the end, you just loop back to the beginning, right? You don't need like here's row 0, 10 properties, and then only properties at column 9 and only properties at column 0. That gets a little weird, and then like figuring out what space you're on gets really awkward. I think just imagining it from 0 to 39, and then you just go back to 0 again is probably the easiest way to conceptualize that, right? For jail, we'll have the go to jail space. Don't bother with the rule of rolling doubles 3 times in a row. So in real Monopoly, if you roll doubles 3 times in a row, you go to jail. Don't worry about it, right? In fact, just skip the doubles rule if you want, right? It's probably easier just to ignore the doubles rule. So usually, if you roll doubles, you got to go and you got to go again. Just forget it. Like it's easier to not, right? Because then you have to track a bunch of things like how many times you've gotten doubles in a row, and then you have to just forget it, right? We're just doing a basic version, so that's okay. But with jail, right, we'll have so you have to go there, and then in the real rules, you can wait until you roll doubles to get out, up to 3 times. So for jail, just make the player pay 50 to get out immediately. Right. So you go to jail, you have to pay $50, but it moves you to the jail space. That's all we're going to do with that.
Like once you hold in the spot, the jail, or right, you like send the email.
Yep. Yeah. So the go to jail square sends you to jail. You pay $50, and that's it. That's all. That's all we're going to do with that one because that's basic, right? Immediately. Okay. So again, if you run out of money, you don't have the $50 to pay. You're out of the game, and then your property would just go back to being unowned essentially at that point. It's probably easiest. Okay. Does that make a little bit of sense? So somewhat of a basic version of Monopoly. Now, once we had this done, if we build it certain ways, we could make it run all by itself, right? There's no decisions to make really. Like if you land on a property, you have enough money to buy it, they buy it. You almost never not buy property. Sometimes people might not want to buy property, but again, we'll just assume they buy it. If they have the money, they buy it. On their next return, if they land on something and have to pay a bunch, they got to get the game, they lost, right? Whatever. So once we had this down, then we could start building and doing simulations and doing loops and say, how long does it take an average game of Monopoly for someone to win or lose? Right? We could get into that sort of thing. We could start adding details about if you own the property groups, you can start building houses and building hotels. And we don't need to add those features right now, though. Right? We're just doing our basic version. So, and then if you, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, so this is all we need, but you can add as much as you want here, right? And then if you want to work with partners, you can. Yeah, I need your GitHub usernames. Hub usernames to set up shared access. Okay, so let's add a rubric here. So we'll kind of break it down piece by piece by piece. Um, so for our final project, we want the player class, we want the property class, we want save and load, feature. Let's do like 10 points for save and load because there's a lot to it there. And then uh, players take turns around the board.
Yeah, right. So, we're-
I don't know currently. It's like a basic version of Monopoly, though. I could get one in a little while. I've not actually written it yet, though. Um, board, spending money, uh, player out of money, they are out of the game. Game runs until one player is left. So at $200 per pass and go, if we don't have houses and hotels, the game will probably run forever. It's really hard to get out until you start charging enough money with houses and hotels. We just don't care. It's okay. It's not worth adding all those extra features to it because it gets more complex. Like figuring out if the property has houses and hotels, how much they own, how much they cost. Like, those are more details we could add later. But for now, we're not going to bother with that, right? Uh, so that one's 10 points for that game loop happening. And we get 5 points for
when we're supposed to start, it's still
yeah. You start with $1,500, I think. Probably. I'd have to look at the rules again.
eventually, as they purchase these properties, they lose money, right?
Yeah, and then they start getting rent back when people land on
And
them. Yep. And
whenever somebody lands on the all the property, the person who landed there will lose money while the owner will gain money.
yeah, yeah. So you pay the rent to the person who owns it. Yep. What was the last one I had here? Jail, properties. Uh, hang on one sec. I just did this for my other class. Both classes are doing the same project for fun, so I think that's entertaining. I don't remember what I put in the rubric because my brain is mush. Oh, players have owners. There we go. So property have owners. Okay. So how properties actually work then, right? We'll do that a little bit separate. 5 points for that. So the properties have stupid copy paste. So properties have owners. If no owners must pay, non-owners must pay rent to the owner. If it isn't owned, the player can purchase it when landing on it. So 5 points for that. So that should be the 40 points here, kind of broken up. Again, we want to build it piece by piece by piece over 10 days, 10 different commits at least, right? More than that, it's perfectly fine to even get scored, right? So build out just, hey, can you go around the board in a circle? And remember, please, 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 you roll 2d6. That is not the same as generating a random number 2 to 12. You all know this, right? You're stats people. You like numbers. The chance of getting a number between 2 and 12 is not the same as the sum of two dice, 1 to 6. It's a nice bell curve, right? So 2d6, 6.
So, yeah, right. So also these are the statistics,
So, like most often, 16% of the time, 7, right, 1/6, you're going to get a 7. Because out of the 36 different ways you can roll two six-sided dice, 6 of them show up as a 7, right? So the odds of getting a 2 and the odds of getting a 12 are much less. There's only one way to get a 12, one way to get a 2, and so on and so on, right? So please don't just generate a number between 2 and 12. Generate two numbers between 1 and 6 and add them together, right? Please. Okay. Thank you. That's just a silly. People have done that before, and it drives me crazy. It doesn't work like that. So sad. And you guys know better. Okay. So that's the final project. So that's what we have for the last month now.
we create mechanism to roll the dice.
Yeah. So play a roll and just generate 1d6 plus 1d6 or 1 to 6 plus 1 to 6. That's all.
What's the travel? What's the travel?
Yeah. Yeah. Random 1 to 6 plus random 1 to 6.
So,
Yep.
what we will do is we get us so we now the phone will clear. Maybe another travel function that how will clear just
Yeah. So it'll change their space to the jail space, which is space number 10, and then they'll take away $50.
they now will have one. Just the first the phone.
Yeah. No, there's no class or anything. Yeah. So space 30 is go to jail, takes you to space 10, cost you $50. Yep. That's all. Yep. So that's all we've got. We're off on break all of next week. Enjoy. Have a lot of fun. Eat some turkey if you like turkey. Eat your tofu turkey, tofurkey if you like tofu turkey. It's actually not bad, I promise. I enjoy it. We'll come back. Nope. Oh my goodness, that's the wrong class. This one here. I should do the right one here. My bad. We'll get it. We'll get it. When we come back after Thanksgiving, we have one or two more topics. Again, we're going to get into inheritance and recursion more next semester if you continue on. The Python for data science is some cool libraries and things. I'm just going to tell you about them. You can go explore them. Great tools. This is why we learn Python, so we can use these tools for data science, right? We need to understand Python to know how these tools actually work, that sort of thing. And then the week after that is just work time. So the lecture time and the lab time, I'll just set aside just for you to work on the final project. And so I can go around and answer your questions. Okay. And then we're presenting December 13th. So you'll play the game for us, show us how it works. So you'll share the screen and then run the game, load a game, save a game, play a couple rounds. That's all it is. Maybe we'll ask it to see your code real quick, but you'll have it in GitHub so I can check out your code.
Okay.
Okay.
So, say again, sorry, we're gonna have more classes.
So we've got, yes, we got 11, 27, and 29 for inheritance, recursion, and Python for data science, and the lab. And then 12.4 and 12.6 are just work time where I can answer your questions. So, and if you want to work with a partner, great. If you just want to do it yourself, that's fine too. Just work time. Yep. And then we present on the 13th. So just a little less than a month away, we present. So hopefully you can get it done early, right? Get it done and out of the way, so you don't have to worry about the finals week. It's up to you.
What is the question for file? I think the width, right? So width of the file
Yep.
from either the right, open, either right, band, or
You can open it for read is the default. You can give it a W to open for write mode, which will erase the contents and then just whatever you want to write there. Or if you'll go with A for append, it'll leave the contents there, and as you write to it, it'll just add it to the bottom of the file.
okay. Well, zero difference to open once, and then whatever one like reading and things.
You can, but it's harder, and we don't get into it. So you have to like specifically seek back and forth a certain number of bytes. Say, hey, jump forward 50 bytes, and then right here at 50, like it's hard. So we're just gonna not do it right now.
So I can open, arrive, close.
Yep.
Read, close.
Yep. Yeah, generally we'll just do one thing. We'll either read it and close it or write it and close it. Yeah. Yeah. We've got files here, right? There we go. Let me commit this. So here's project 3.
We're going to use files for the final.
Yeah, that's the save and load is using files. So when you save the game, you're going to write data to a file. So you have to write all the properties down, who owns them. You have to write all the players down, how much money they have, what space they're on, and you also need to know whose turn it is. So when the game loads, hey, it's player three's turn. Yeah, so for like the data that you need is actually not too bad, right? So you need the 40 properties with owners, like 40 property owners, really. Owner name or number, however you wanted to do that, right? That's all we know because the properties are always the same. They're always the same name. They always have the same purchase amount. They always have the same rent. We don't need to save that to a file. All we need to know is who owns it, right? And then we need to know the players. So then list players with name, dollar, and current space. So this one is the harder one. Like how many players, what their name is, how much money they have, what their current space is, and then we need to know the current player or next player's turn or whatever it is, right? So if you imagine putting this in a file, we could format it a couple different ways, however you wanted to do it. Like one way you can do it here, we might just have 40 properties out. Like it might be owner zero, owner zero, owner zero, player one, player two. Like here's player number, who owns these properties, right? Whatever happens to be. That's all we need to know for property. And we just have that for 40 lines. That's the information I need for the properties, right? So we could say the first 40 lines will be this. I can loop through and set all my property owners. Then you might say the next line then might be, the number of players. You could read that and then hey, I'm going to have Eric. Eric had, 1235, and then he's on space 27. Maybe I have Jeb, right? So like if I had three players, right? I had Eric, I have Jeb. He has this much money. He's on space 15, right? And then I had Journey likes to play too. So Journey would be on, maybe she has 1,000 and she's on space, 39 or something.
So whenever I want to know where exactly the player is at on the board, like their information, I just look it on the file.
So you probably don't need to write the file every turn. Like the idea could be in the menu, you could say play or save or something like that if you wanted. If you wanted to write it every turn, you could do that too. That would be easy enough to write it every turn because files are pretty quick. But so when we save it, right, we'd have the list of properties. Right, this is 40 40 property owners, right? Who owns this one? Player one, player two, player zero, or something, right? I don't know. Negative one. I don't like something to represent it's not owned by somebody or names or numbers, however you wanted to do that, right? We'd have 40 properties and then have a number that tells me how many players I need to read. If I read a three, I know I need to read three players. Each player is going to be name, amount, space, name, amount, space, name, amount, space. So it tells me what the next line should be, right? And then I need to know who's the like maybe the last line then is it's currently player number one, one's turn.
So question on those CSV files.
Hmm.
So it's only have like name, number, and like money.
Hmm.
Like visual number one, it's okay.
Yeah.
How can I go like setting or like on second shoe just the name?
So it's specifically in a CSV file.
What?
Once you read the row out, right, you get all the different details out. So when we did our CSV files, um, we just got the entire row. Where's our CSV? So it gives you the entire row at a time, and the row is comma separated, right? So the reader was reading out each individual row. So then when we looked at rows here, so we run this in debug mode, right, the individual row here had, where's our row? It had individual pieces. So it had segment like index zero was this. So it gave you a list. So it turns a row into a list. Each item was the value in that cell, right? So you would have Pedro in the first one, right? And then you would have this in the next one, this in the next one, this in the next one. Right?
For you line shoot, which would you like by name or by number?
Yep.
Use the this notation, like like list, this zero, this one.
Hmm. Yeah. So
Like
yeah, yeah, definitely.
what is the dwelling? Number eight.
What? The 13th. Yeah, we're presenting on the 13th. Is that a Monday? That's a Wednesday. So yeah, basically a month from now is a following Wednesday. So 4 weeks, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. So we got 4 weeks. That's 28 days. I need commits on at least 10 of them in order to score this thing, so that you can put in some incremental work, which is good for you too, right? You want to do it a little bit at a time. Some people are like, oh, I can just pull an all-nighter and I'll just cram it out the last day. We actually have scientific studies that show if you go too long, because programming is a creative process, you actually start losing quality and you're introducing more bugs. Like we scientifically know this. It's not possible to do good work when you're tired and sleepy when you have to do creative work. Right? You actually cause more problems. So the good companies know not to push their people too bad and not to have this mandatory overtime nonsense. Unless you're a game studio who's like, hey, we set an arbitrary deadline. We have to ship the game on X date. So developers, you're working 7 days a week now, 12 hours a day. Screw you. Be like Nintendo and be like, hey, we'll just push the date back. The game's not the quality we want. We're going to push the date back. And everyone's like, that's fine. We want a quality game. We don't want garbage. Like, was it, what was that game they launched that was like so many different bugs in it? Uh, that Cyberpunk,
Yes.
right? That just launched. It was off because they wanted to hit their date. They didn't care that it had so many bugs that pissed a bunch of people off. They had to ship on their date because that's what they said they wanted to do. Like, don't be like them,
You
right?
like them?
Oh yeah, I love the games.
What's your favorite game?
Uh, what kind of game? Like a board game or computer game or
What's your favorite genre?
so I love RPG games. Um, I like that. So Diablo's interesting. It gets boring quick, but like the story, the RPG bit is kind of interesting. Skyrim was really fun. Put way too many hours into Skyrim. That was neat. Baldur's Gate's fun. Which one?
Blue game.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. And of course, I want to do all the different storylines, right? So,
Yeah.
so be a lot more hours into that. Those are fun. Yeah, board games are great. Strategy games, those are fun. I like chess. Lots of games. Yeah, chess is good. I'm not great at it. I'm like 1200 or so rated online, so it's a lot of fun.
What's your game?
Which one? Yeah, a little bit. That one seemed to get boring really quick. Like, it's probably more like the Diablo style game. Like you do the mission, you do the storyline, and then there wasn't really a lot of replayability for me. That was all. Like it was fun, like for the first playthrough, and that was it.
What about Minecraft?
Oh yeah, yeah, Minecraft's fun. Yeah, I play with my kids. Yep,
Very cool.
yep.
You know, every 5 years does sounds play Minecraft show.
The redstone's actually really cool. You can teach logic and circuit design using redstone.
Uh-huh.
So I was trying to show my kids like, hey, here's an OR gate or an AND gate and a NAND thing and all this stuff, and they're like, Dad, can we just play Minecraft? Like, I am playing Minecraft. Like, you play weird. But no, it's really cool. There's a whole education version you can get like for free and license out and stuff. And It's fun stuff. So, all right, yeah, we'll stop.